Ever wonder how your phone keeps a list of all your contacts? Or how a game keeps track of every item in your inventory? Well, the secret sauce behind all of it is a simple but incredibly powerful programming concept called an array. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly what an array is and why it's so important. Let's get into it.
Okay, picture this. You're building your first program. At the start, you're just handling a few pieces of data, and it's easy. But then, things start to grow. Suddenly, you've got hundreds, maybe thousands of similar items to manage. You've just hit what I like to call the data dilemma. And trust me, every single programmer runs into this.
Let's make this real with a simple example. Imagine you're coding a basketball game. Pretty straightforward, right? You just need to keep track of the points scored in each of the 4 quarters. So how would you go about storing those 4 scores? Now, for just 4 scores, you could probably get away with creating 4 separate variables. Sure, why not? But what happens when the problem gets bigger? What if you needed to store 200 scores or 1,000? Yeah, suddenly the idea of creating 200 different variables by hand sounds, well, not just annoying, but completely ridiculous. And of course, there is a better way. It's not just a little better. It's one of the absolute cornerstones of all programming. It's called an array. So, to really wrap our heads around what an array is, I want you to think about a train. Yep, a train. Stick with me here, I promise this analogy makes everything click into place. Think about it like this. A regular single variable, that's like a pickup truck. It has one container, the truck bed, and it can hold one piece of cargo. That's it. An array, though, an array is a freight train. It's one single train, but it's made up of many, many cars all linked together. And each car can hold its own piece of data. And that, right there, is the magic of an array. It's a special kind of variable that's specifically designed to hold a whole list of data. But here's the best part. You can get to any item in that list instantly. No sweat. So we have our train, which is great, but how do we actually load the cargo into the cars? And how do we get it back out again? Let's take a look at how we actually use an array in our code. First things first, let's learn a key bit of vocabulary. Each individual item stored inside an array is called an element. In our train analogy, the element is just the cargo sitting inside one of those train cars. Simple as that. Let's jump back to our basketball game. Instead of 4 separate variables, we can now use just one single array. Let's call it points per quarter. As you can see, the points for each quarter are the elements. And notice that each element has its own unique location number. We call that number the index. It's basically the address for each score. So the big question is, how do we get the score for, say, the 4th quarter? Well, it all comes down to knowing its index number. And it's actually super simple. You just use the array's name, followed by the index you want inside a pair of square brackets. So to get that 4th quarter score, we would write points per quarter 3. Hold on, I know exactly what you might be thinking right now. Wait a minute, the 4th quarter is at location number 3? That seems weird. And you are absolutely right to notice that. This is probably the #1 most important thing to remember about arrays. Here's the deal. In almost every major programming language you'll ever use, I'm talking Java, C++, Python, you name it, arrays don't start counting from 1. They start at 0. This is called zero-based indexing, and it's a fundamental rule you just have to burn into your brain. Let's break that down because it is so important. The very first item in an array is at index 0. The second item is at index 1. The third item is at index 2. And so our 4th quarter score is at index 3. I know it feels a little strange at first, but I promise you get used to it really fast. Okay, enough theory. Let's see how this all looks in actual code. How do we create and use these powerful data structures for real? Creating an array is basically a 3-step process. First, you declare it. That's just telling the computer, hey, I'm going to need an array that holds integers. Second, you allocate memory for it. That's like reserving exactly 3 empty cars for your train. And third, you assign values to the elements. This is you actually loading the cargo into each car, using its index. Now this is really cool because it shows you what's happening behind the scenes in the computer's memory. When we first allocate the array, the system gives us 3 empty slots and just fills them with a default value of 0. Then, as we run our assignment code, we're just replacing those zeros one by one with the actual values we want to store. And getting the data back out is just as easy. You use the exact same syntax.
To get the value at index 1, you just write item counts 1, and the program will give you back 119. It's that simple.
All right, let's wrap this out. We started with this big data dilemma and found an incredibly elegant solution. So let's recap the key things to remember. So what's the bottom line? Arrays are your go-to tool for managing lists of data. They let you store multiple elements under a single name. You get to any specific element by using its index. And the golden rule, the one you can't ever forget, the first index is always 0.
You know, understanding this one concept is a huge step. It takes you from handling just single pieces of information to managing entire collections of it. So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you have a tool to store and manage whole lists of data, what powerful new programs could you build? The possibilities are vast.